Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today it's time for our job balance adjustments. I'm not just going to be reading off the patch notes like I usually do, because we've only gotten potency changes, so the patch notes themselves are a bit boring, although I guess Dragoon did get a quality of life change, which I'll touch upon in just a second. But instead, I'll be taking a look at the calculations that people have done to give a bit more perspective on these changes, because just seeing some potency increases doesn't mean anything if you don't know how they compare against the other jobs. And then there is also a second chart over here that shows the DPS increases that have actually happened and then how the jobs compare against each other. So let's start with the quality of life change for Dragoon so that we can get that one out of the way. Dragon Sight now has a much longer range. It's the same range as the Astrologian Star, and we all know how big that is, so it'll be much easier to give your buff to the preferred player. And it's also just that, a buff. So because there is no longer a tether, it's just a buff that you give to a party member, they also got rid of the animation for the tether. So it does remove this buddy feeling that we had, because when you got the tether you wanted to stay close to your Dragoon, and now you don't really get that anymore. But it does make it a lot more user friendly. As for potency changes, Paladin has been brought up to the level of Warrior, which is exactly what I wanted to happen. Gunbreaker and Dark Knight are the DPS focused tanks with a busier rotation and less party utility, whereas Paladin and Warrior are easier to play and bring more utility to the party, so I'm okay with them being a bit lower in the DPS department. They're also not that much lower either, so you can clear everything fine with them. For example, my static cleared week 1 Savage with the Warrior Paladin combo, and that was before the buffs. So it's definitely going to be fine now after the buffs and after we've had a few weeks of loot. I guess Warrior also got a buff, but that was only to their ranged attack, which won't really affect the job, to be honest. Nothing changed to our healers, which looking at their DPS output I wasn't expecting either. I'm still kinda hoping to see some Astrologian changes and potentially a White Mage change, but those will have to wait until 6.1, as that is where they are planning to do some actual job changes and not just DPS number adjustments. So for DPS, all of the melees except Reaper have gotten some buffs, which I was surprised to see Monk get a buff, but it's a very small one, so it won't affect their DPS output too much. It does mean that even though Samurai and Black Mage got buffed, Monk will still be king, at least for now. As for Samurai, this has been brought closer to Monk and Reaper, and Dragoon and Ninja are still a little bit behind on Samurai, but they are pretty much in line with each other. So the DPS difference is at least within a close enough margin for me to be happy with it. As for our ranged, Bart didn't get buffed, but it was already the best range, so I can see why. Machinist got some very minor buffs that honestly weren't enough. I would have liked for them to get more buffs. And Dancer got some really big buffs, but the Dancer also needed them the most, as they were quite far behind the rest of the pack. So while our ranged role within themselves is better balanced now, I still feel like they need more buffs, because they are still a fair amount behind on everyone else. And that brings us to our casters. Black Mage got some decent buffs, bringing it back to where it should have been, so on par with Samurai and Monk. And Red Mage didn't get any buffs, which I was kinda hoping we would, as its DPS isn't that amazing right now. And of course, with all of the other buffs that have happened, it's even more so the case. And same thing goes for Summoner. This one barely got DPS buffs, so they are still quite far behind the rest as well. So while I'm overall quite happy with most of the changes, Monk could have done without a change, and the ranged role as well as our two casters that I mentioned could have gotten a bit more. But we'll see what happens in patch 6.1, as we'll get some bigger changes in that one. For now at least it makes things a bit better, and we'll see over the next few weeks how much these changes actually impacted the jobs, because right now we can only talk about the changes looking at the math, but it should be close to how the jobs will be performing. And if these estimates are correct, then the balance is already a lot better than before. Still not perfect, but a lot better. And with that, I've said everything I wanted to say, so I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for their support, and I'll see you in the next one.